Warmest of greetings to you, and welcome to Happily Ever Teaching, where we help you enthrall your learners in every subject under the sun using the best teaching method known to science, storytelling. To do this, we feature special guest educators who are passionately keen for your children to become amazing and successful human beings. I am storyteller Chip Cahoon, and with me today is...
My name's Bex and I am a teacher from Cambridgeshire. I've had experience across the primary age range. I've also had experience being a deputy head, and now I'm the leader of curriculum and teaching and learning at my school, and I'm very excited to be with you today.
And we are very pleased to have you, our listener, with us as we explore personal, social, health and emotional education with a folktale from Japan. So, for all the fun and effectiveness of story-led learning, let's don our finest hats, sprinkle some fairy dust, and grab a snorkel as we properly dive for once, into this week's story. Kind-hearted Urashima is exactly the kind of person you'd like to have around. He cares for his family and everyone on his street in Japan, and even rescues a turtle from the absent-minded actions of some children on the beach. But even Urashima is surprised when the ocean chooses to reward his good deeds. The turtle let Urashima slide off her shell onto the carpet of the throne room. Then she bowed her head to the Sea King and said, "Your Majesty, I present to you Urashima, the noble fisherman who saved my daughter's life." Urashima didn't know what to do or say, so he bowed as well. The Sea King was a merman with a tail as big as a house. His voice boomed as he said, "Welcome, Urashima. A friend of the turtles is a friend of mine. We would be honored to have you as a guest here in the Dragon Palace. Make yourself at home, and please join us for dinner tonight." Urashima knew he couldn't stay too long. He had to get back home to his mum and dad to take them their vegetables. He also needed to pick up some new clothes for the children on his street and some medicine for his elderly next-door neighbour. But this was a king, and a sea king at that. Urashima was sure his mum and dad would want him to enjoy the chance of an evening with such incredible royal company. They would love the stories he could tell them afterwards. So Urashima bowed again and said, "Your Majesty, the honor is all mine, and arigato gozaimashita. Thank you. I would love to join you for dinner tonight." And if you and your young learners want to see if Urashima makes it back to his family and friends in time, you can download our sister podcast, Fables and Fairy Tales, or search our website, epictales.co.uk, for The Underwater Kingdom. There you'll find a video of me telling the story that you can share with your children. And if you sign up as an Epic Educator, you'll also get a copy as an ebook or paperback illustrated by the magically majestic Korky Paul, as well as the full audiobook for you to download at any time, and even some tips for telling the story yourself. Right now, though, let's begin our discussion with Bex here by asking, Bex, did this story have you swimming in joy?
I definitely did. I just love this story. Particularly, my favourite part is where the description of the underwater kingdom and Korky's illustrations as well are just magical. So that's definitely my favourite part, with the journey to the Dragon Palace. But we'll tell you more about that later. It's
a fantastic story. I've loved this story. I've known about it for a very long time, and I'm glad that we're finally bringing it to this podcast. And yeah, you're right. Korky's done an amazing job turning those descriptions into really beautiful artwork. I'm sure this is going to get many children inspired, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. And grown-ups too.
But it's also a very complex story, a bit of a almost dangerous choice, would you say, to bring to children? Well, I'll ask you, what was the moral you saw in this story?
Well, for me, it was definitely all about, so it's the kind of theme of kindness is definitely in there, and the fact about one good turn deserving another. But also, as I was reading it, you've obviously got the whole dreamland and the kind of like, and being present, and whether it's okay to be a dreamer or dreaming all the time, and whether that's okay or not. So it also wrapped up in that, you've got this theme of dreaming, this theme of kindness, and one good turns, and that good turn deserves another. And then and I like picking out the bit about rest as well, linked to the dreaming. So there's quite a lot we can explore for PSHE.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely pick up on the rest part soon, I'm sure. I love the idea of seeing the underwater kingdom as kind of like a dream world, but you're right that it's sort of one good turn deserves another. But in the end, of course, Urashima does not have a happy ending in this story. Or, well, maybe he does. I mean, he doesn't really remember anything, so I suppose it's a completely ambiguous ending. He gets a blank slate, really. But if you've followed him from the beginning and you know everything that he's been through, then you can't help but feel sorry for him, can you? Because he doesn't get anything that he wants. He doesn't get his time with his family and friends, and he doesn't even get his underwater kingdom with his princess anymore. He kind of loses it all. So how would you bring this up with the children across the primary age range? I mean, would you actually use this story with children in the early years and key stage 1? So for us, that's 4 to 7 year olds. Yeah,
definitely. I think like that's the magic of story. I mean, that's why storytelling is such a powerful tool for educators, because any story can be used with any age range. And that's why I love storytelling so much, and stories.
That's why we have you here.
Yeah, hooray! And I think that for me, like just listening to you talking about the story, because obviously I've had a chance to have a look at it and pull out some ideas that we can use in the classroom or at home. But thinking about actually even encouraging the children to make the most of every opportunity, like the story can lead to that being a moral as well. That I hadn't written it down, but just listening to you speak, I thought actually you could use it as an opportunity even for the younger ones to say, like, actually when a friend, you're not sure if you want to go and play with that person, actually make the most of that opportunity, because it could turn into a brilliant friendship or a brilliant opportunity. Or like with your older children in your year 6 who are about to do their last year of primary school, you can talk to them about actually making the most of every opportunity while they're at primary school and not missing out on things. Maybe even if he never gets his memory back, actually he still might dream about, when he's asleep, dream about his experiences. So it's better to have experienced something.
I love what you're saying there. I mean, it is a great way to help younger listeners and younger learners especially to just touch upon these really complex themes in a way that is really easy to understand. And not only that, but they are going to remember them because they've spent so long creating this entire world inside their head. For me, I think one of the biggest things that comes out from this story is the sort of idea of rights and responsibilities, and knowing, obviously, Urashima is very conscious of other people's rights. He's looking after those people in his street. He's looking after the turtle. He's also sort of looking after the children, even though they were playing with the turtle. But he kind of nurtures a bit of responsibility by doing that. He develops a responsibility by looking after the people on his street. They start to depend on him. And when he gets a sort of reward and he gets carried away and he kind of loses the opportunity to go back to them, is kind of teaching you that you need to have some respect for those people who depend on you. You can't ever lose sight of them. Yes, definitely enjoy the now, be in the moment. You can have too much of a good thing, I suppose, is a shorter, clearer way of putting it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for children and obviously we always say for children and I always say for adults as well, because we all need to, there's so much we can learn as well. But just obviously from very young, your children in your reception in Key Stage 1, so 4 to 7 year olds, you can teach them about their responsibility of tidying away things and making the classroom like a shared, happy environment, and their responsibility in in that role in making the classroom a safe and happy place equally as much as your children who are in the junior school, we would call it, so your year 3s and upwards, so your 8 to 11-year-olds actually, and they can have a wider school responsibility as well. So this story would be great to use if you've got a school council or an eco council as well, as part of a discussion about, the environment, and also then how we can work as a school to be responsible for helping one another. So it's a really great story. There's so much to pull out of it.
So how would you do that then? How would you start pulling some of this out?
I would want to talk to the children all about the dream world that Urashima ends up in when he's underwater, and all of the things that he sees and all of the experiences that he has, but also recognising that because he's in this dreamland, 700 years passes, and when he arrives back on the land, everything's obviously going to be different. The people that he wants to go back to are not there. So actually talking to the children, I'm thinking, first of all, let's think about the older children, so our Key Stage 2 children, so our 8 to 11-year-olds, actually talking to them about that it's okay to go into a world of your own that you've created, or places of rest, but actually that you need to have an awareness of how kind of long you're there and be present as well. So actually teaching them that skill of, okay, my mind's wandering off over here, I should be listening to this. This isn't an appropriate time to be in my underwater world in my dragon palace. I need to be present in the lesson. But also I've thought quite a lot, and I've been reading quite a lot about actually the way people rest. So I think I would like to explore that with particularly the older children. So discussing the fact that it's okay to rest by going for a walk, for example, because I always used to think as a child and as a young adult that it was you could only rest by kind of sleeping or being still, and I'm not a very still person. I quite enjoy being out and about. I quite enjoy being out and about in the countryside and in nature and creation, and actually I've learnt that that's a way that I rest. I don't rest by sitting still. And I think a lot of the particularly older children, as they're preparing to go on to secondary school, or as they're starting to go into Key Stage 2, where they're kind of so year 3, that's 8-year-old, where more learning will be happening, and they'd have to start taking more responsibility of their time and their week and managing homework and all of that before to prepare them for secondary school. I think them learning how to rest is really important. So I think that's where I'd start it with, kick off the story with the older children.
Yeah, it's fabulous hearing you speak about that, because I think I'm exactly the same, and I constantly have people saying to me things like, oh, you need to take a break, you need to rest. And if you ask somebody who rests or just enjoys going out and being with people, for example, going out and socializing, that can be restful, or going out and playing some music or whatever, going out for a jog. I'm so grateful to you, Bex, for bringing up the fact that this can be a way of relaxing. I actually find my tax return relaxing just because it's something different, and I know that makes me very weird. But yeah, having that conversation with older children so they get to have a bit more self-awareness, that can only be helpful, can't it?
Yeah, definitely. I love a good form too. They're good. Forms can be relaxing, but I think it's equally important for our younger children as well. Those children in our early years and Key Stage 1 classes, so 4 to 7-year-olds, because actually school's quite a tiring place for some of the smaller ones, and actually teaching them about rest from early on can really, really help them to focus and concentrate in school, help them to have a little bit of an awareness of. I would often write in my reports this child's great when they're not in their own little world, and I thought actually I'm not teaching them that it's easy for your mind to wander off somewhere else, and it's about having that understanding of you as a person and where your mind goes and how to get yourself back into the room. And I was thinking about continuous provision that lots of schools are adopting, and in year 1 and in early years particularly, and just thinking of maybe having some rest stations where they could come and they could rest in different ways, and maybe having some of their adults like teachers and from the school, and maybe other staff, and maybe parents and carers and people in the community coming and talking about how they rest, and then setting that up so the children can access rest as part of their day. Particularly, I just think it's really, really important for the younger ones as well to understand how to rest well.
Yeah, well, hearing you talk about this, Hiroshima does sound more and more like the most perfect story to build up a station like that, especially if Hiroshima becomes sort of the example that gets you creating that kind of world. Maybe you could make your rest station like it's a kind of underwater kingdom almost, with things that they can play with, but also if they're one of those more active ones, but also places where they could maybe take a nap or get comfortable if they want to, read, etc. You could also have little boxes in the same way that Hiroshima has to take a box away from the underwater kingdom in order to help him get back. So like you said, in terms of training your mind to make sure that you stay focused on what you're doing, you could almost help the children by saying, okay, when you're leaving the rest station, pack all of your fantasy world into this little box, put a lid on it, keep it with you so it's still with you, and that will allow you to focus on your work, your homework, your friends, your time in the class, your teacher, and then when you're ready, when you need to go back to the rest, that box will help you go back into this fantasy world.
Yeah, I really like that idea, and I think it'd be lovely for them to have them even on their desks so they can look at it and remember. Because it's lots of children we know are visual learners, so learn through seeing things or and just a visual reminder on their desk that this is not rest time, the box is shut, like it's learning time. And it'd just be like really great. And I've put things in children's boxes, like giving them little boxes on their tables before as a reward thing, so you could maybe pop bits into their rest box for them to use, like even if it's tiny, just a little like you've earned some time in the rest zone or something. So there'd be there's so many opportunities. And I love the thought of creating the like rest area as an underwater kingdom, and thinking about how you could use maybe the seaweed to make a hammock if you were needing to rest by lying down, and just like the opportunities are endless.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's a very calming ambiance, isn't it? The kind of under the sea theme. So yeah, you can, well, it doesn't have to be though. It can have all of the action and adventure of, things like The Little Mermaid and Pirates of the Caribbean. The water is such a malleable allegory. So yeah, that could work really well for all your restful types of children. And in fact, would you also consider doing that with some of the older children though? So for 7 through to 11, do you think they would benefit from having an underwater rest space?
Yeah, I think they definitely would. I'm a firm believer that actually what works for an early years child can also work for a year 6, and they're still a child. And sometimes I think we ask our children to grow up in primary school a little bit too quickly, and actually they still like the play and the tactileness of having like a really touchy-feely reading corner. So like maybe we could set up a rest zone as well, and just even thinking as well about the staff in the school, so even using this story as part of maybe inset or well-being, because well-being and mindfulness are a big part of our curriculum. I mean, it's now entwined into the PSHE section of the national curriculum for all children, and then obviously we need to look after our staff as well and make sure they're resting too. So maybe we have an underwater rest zone in our staff room as well.
With the power of the tides.
Yeah, underwater.
Yeah, underwater. That would be fantastic. That's all we have time for today, folks. If you try out any of these ideas, or if you'd like us to help you teach a topic you are soon to cover with your young learners, let us know on social media using @TeachHappily, or leave us a review using your favourite podcast app. Please also share this podcast with your colleagues and help us start a story-led revolution in classrooms around the world, so children everywhere can learn in a way that's effective, memorable and enjoyable all at the same time. Tomorrow, Hiroshima will help us teach English, but right now it only remains for us to say cheerio, and we hope to hear your story soon. So, cheerio! And we hope to hear your story soon.